All right, and welcome back to the arena, the live show where we meet every week, PJ and myself, Peter, to talk about all things to do with just manhood, masculinity, the exploration of what does it mean to be a man, and how do you become a better man, right? Become that better version of yourself. And we're both all about becoming a 1% better version of yourself every day. You put in that 1% improvement on a daily basis, and what happens is you have cumulative and exponential returns over time, right? Sometimes self-help, personal growth, personal development, all of that can feel overwhelming. It can be overwhelming to look at the goals of what you want to achieve, who you want to become, and the difference between that and who you are and where you are now can be rather discouraging, right?
Overwhelming.
So, we want to break that down for you and really ultimately create a space every week where you can tune in, connect, hear stories, hear practical tips, and really just chill with us as we walk through the process, talk through the process, and share some nuggets with you. So, today we are here to talk about embracing vulnerability, which is, I know, just like good God, terrifying subject for men because vulnerability inherently has the word vulnerable in it, and that sounds like weak, right? And so it's a great topic to dig into because vulnerability is actually the path to strength, but it has to be handled properly. You have to know when and how to be vulnerable, right? If you're never vulnerable, you become brittle and you break, right? If you're vulnerable at the wrong time, then yes, you're opening yourself up probably around the wrong people. That can be detrimental too. But there's the right path, the healthy path, that's actually going to open you up to healing so you can process your emotion, and which is critical for men, for women too, everybody,
Yep.
human beings, obviously, right? But we need to learn how to process our emotion and
The
just
healthy
open up
way.
about it in the first damn place. So, yeah, healthy way. Take us away, PJ.
So I've been pondering this question for a while because I've always had no problem expressing myself, but
Mm.
I feel unfortunately it's the audience. You know, being the man archetype of the lover, which we will talk about men archetypes at a later date. I'm always expressing who I am without a care, and it has stabbed me in the back. But
Mm.
I've learned that it has to be reciprocated. If you're going to open yourself up, if you're going to open up your rib cage and show your emotions, show your feelings, show your trauma and the healing process, how do you do it in an engaging way? Something that could be fun for both parties. So something that I had today, it's one of my favorite games, is We're Not Really Strangers.
Yeah.
I post about this a lot. I found this on Instagram, Peter, and it's one of the games that really helped me grow as a person. It helped me understand the other individual that I was trying to get close to. Some of it was amazing, and you know, we both learned who we are. Other times, it was a stab in the back
Mm.
because it was, hey, you're not manly enough. Hey, you're way too emotional for me. Why are we using this game? Why are we talking about these questions? So I wanted to actually give two questions to you that I thought were extremely vulnerable.
Okay.
Do you believe everyone has a calling? If so, do you think you found mine? I'm sorry. Do you think you found yours?
Do I think I found? Yeah, right. Who's? Okay, so is that the two questions?
That's one. I got another one. I'm
Oh,
gonna
okay, okay. Because
hold
that's
that
you're
off.
you're you're sneaking in extras here. That was two questions.
Star. Damn.
Cue the synth wave. Woo! Boom,
Ooh.
boom, boom, boom. All right. So, do I believe everybody has a calling? Absolutely. And that's a topic we need to discuss here because I think it's a reason why so many men feel like they're drifting through life is because they're disconnected from their calling, which is where you find your sense of purpose and meaning in life, right? Because every man, what we long for is a sense of contribution to give, to support others, to use our strength, our energy, our capacity for the benefit of others, right? That's where building a legacy comes from, right? And building in what legacy? Once again, I just really absolutely firmly believe that everyone has a calling. And if you're not pursuing your call, because your calling is something you discover, it's not something that you go out and like determine, oh, I'm going to be, it always cracks me up when people are like, I'm going to be the next Jeff Bezos. Well, why? Like, one wasn't enough, you know? Like, yeah, it just, but more importantly, why not be you? Why are you trying to be the next somebody else? The most important person you can be is yourself, and truly, authentically, and really yourself, right? Which ties right into what we're going to talk about today, which is perfect. So, what was this? Oh yeah, and if so, do I feel like I found mine? Absolutely.
Ah, hell yeah, mate. I love that. I could tell. I could tell through our discussions, our sessions together, the people you impact, your testimonies that you have on your page. I just can't wait to see you grow and let that expand astronomically.
Mm-hmm.
But dig deeper. What about that calling, which you call, how would you describe it to somebody that hasn't met you yet, doesn't know all about who Peter is?
It's that new Discord bio. You know what I'm talking about. Ooh, cue the synth again. It's the modern Merlin, right? The Kingmaker. To empower others to take up the sword so that they can reclaim their kingdom. That's my calling, right? Is to it, and I can't help anyone, right? Is the bizarre reality of this. I can't help anybody because only you can help yourself. And that's part of my message and part of the whole foundation of my work, right? The absolute pillar is that I can't do anything for you, but I can show you the way. And that's what I'm here to do, right? I'm here to show men the way to step into their potential, to discover their calling and to pursue it. Because it's one thing to discover it, right? But the real question is, do you do what it takes? Will you respond? Will you heed the call? Because it will require everything of you, right? Because it requires for us to step into our calling, we have to die to our old self so that the new man might live, right? To go down into the fire like a phoenix, rise from the ashes, renewed and new, right? And so a lot of us are looking for like, oh man, midlife crisis or just like life feels stale or something. You got to find yourself. Otherwise, you'll always be looking. Once again, you can't try to fill your heart and your soul with anything external. It's your heart and soul are actually meant to be a spring flowing and then impacting others. So don't be a vacuum. Don't be a void, right? You do that
Definitely,
by discovering
definitely don't be
yourself.
a void.
And yeah, there you go.
I want to dial in on that, guys, though, because if you're not gonna put any effort in, there's no tangible results, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can't be pointing fingers at us. Hey, I didn't get X, Y, Z. That was a statement that you guys said you could do. It's a tangible result with effort. It's going to cause you to dig into your traumas, to talk about your traumas when you're ready, of course, but without any soul searching, the answers are not going to come. You have it already. You just got to put the key in the treasure
You have it
chest.
all within you. Absolutely. So let's pause on that word trauma. That's a scary word. It's a bad word. Nobody likes that word. Why'd you use that word, PJ? Come on. We're
Damn.
men. We don't have trauma.
Oh no, we do. We just don't like talking about it. That's why I was
That's
like,
right.
oh, just still put the spotlight here. But I think it's important to discuss more freely, to have more of an open debate, discussions, and without fear. That's another thing when you're just talking about
Yeah.
trauma. Unfortunately, of the opposite gender, if we expose that trauma, if we show that side of vulnerability, they crush pieces of us, of who we are. And I've noticed it as I gotten older. It's harder to trust and open up until like those little bricks are broken down. You know,
Mm.
they're like, all right, let me shed some skin so you can understand who I am. But it's just frustrating. What's the what's the point of not being emotionally deep when you're getting to know somebody? I've seen a lot of individuals, men and women, avoid it like the plague. Avoid these conversations. Avoid deep questions and blow it off. Like, oh, no, I don't want to talk about this. Or super like, I'm okay, I'm fine.
I'm
When they
fine.
don't really want the big one, right?
I'm fine. I think that is the big one. I think that's the one that a lot of men um, have just learned to kind of put on, right? To wear the badge of how you doing? I'm fine, because you don't complain, right?
Mm.
Because right, because you don't want to be a complainer, you don't want to be a whiner, you don't want to be weak, and you sure don't want to expose the actual pain that's going on, because inherently that is weakness, and right. So that sounds crazy, so hear me out, right? But because inherently it is weakness until it's healed, and that's the thing, right? So trauma is unresolved. It's unresolved pain. It's something that you didn't understand. Really, to just break it down on a simple level, trauma is something that you didn't understand, that you put you in a state of feeling powerless. So you can think about how many situations in life, and especially as kids, how many times have we had moments where we felt powerless? That's a place of trauma. And if you didn't have recourse to someone, a role model that would help you process that moment, that experience of powerlessness, it hardens into a trauma, right? And what that does is, basically, there's a fascinating book, The Body Keeps the Score, but the bottom line from that, and it's reflected in I mean, all the ancient, like the Eastern medicine traditions, always have understood this. It's just in the West that we got too smart for our own good and became very rational.
Mm.
That's really the sin of the West, is it became so rational. It thought that it's like very left brain, right? We're a very left brain culture in general. Mathematics, science, great things, but there's a right brained aspect to these things. There's an intuitive knowing as well, right? Of certain things that are more difficult. Ironically, now science is catching up with a lot of these ancient understandings, ancient wisdom. Science is catching up and finally discovering the evidence of what was already intuitively known. What I'm getting at is that the body stores emotion. So this is why it's important to open up about your emotion, is that's how you process your emotion. Emotion is always a loop. Just think of a circle, it always needs to complete, right? Your brain is a closure seeking machine, and emotion is in the body. So emotion is the language of the subconscious. Thoughts are the language of the conscious mind, would be one way to differentiate this, right? So when we look at, oh man, I've got like unconscious self-sabotage, kind of stuff like that. We're struggling against ourselves. What are we why? Because you go out to, let's say, back to where we started. You go out, you set some goals, you want to be a better man, and what? Procrastination sets in, or you just like, you find some way to dissipate your energy and never move forward and keep yourself in status quo. And usually it's an emotional body experience, because you can sit there and be like, "Now, come on, gah, snap out of it, gah, stupid," right? And try to think your way out of problems, and it doesn't work, right? And this is why there's so much difficulty in communication between men and women, is because brains are wired different, and our male brains are very much wired for problem solve, get to the point, solve the problem, right? But emotions, it's an interesting opportunity for us, and this is a great place if you want to if you're dealing with problems in your relationship, right? work on you. Don't try to work on the relationship. It sounds so counterintuitive, but it's the absolute path to a thriving relationship is to work on yourself. Don't work on the relationship, because you work on the relationship and it makes it, oh, well, the other person, right? And it starts with, are you able to process your own emotion as a man? It's one of the most critical skills you can have. But to process your own emotion, you have to sit with it. And you don't get to just fix it, especially if it's been sitting there since you were a little kid, right? And Jimmy came and pushed you on the playground. And then ever since then, right, because this is how these things work. The pattern is some event happens, it feels disempowering in the moment, and we assign meaning. And then it creates a neural pathway. And then we repeat, because we're meaning assigning machines as well. We're closure seeking machine. The brain is always seeking closure. I got pushed. It was disempowering. Open loop. How do I close it? Assign meaning. The meaning is I'm not good enough, let's say.
God
The
damn.
meaning is people don't like me. The cool kids don't like me, right? Whatever all these experience. And then what? Then you're an adult, or at least you think you are, because damn, I'm in my 30s, right? It's like I should be an adult now, and yet when I go for a job interview, because I'm going to pitch this deal, right? Whatever it is, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're in the professional, like the career path, whatever, you go for that next level, and all of a sudden you feel yourself freaking out inside, and you can't get it. Why? Because your little boy is going, these people don't like me, because it's assigning that meaning from way back then into the present moment. Because time is irrelevant.
In regards to that, I think most men, we need to change our perspective. Stop going into a room and hoping and wishing that people are going to like you. Why don't you change your mindset? Like, what if I'm going to like them? Especially when you start healing and that inward little boy. Because maybe those people aren't aligned with your values. Maybe those people are not for your betterment.
Absolutely.
Sometimes things just don't work out. There's no conclusion. There's no closure. It's, hey, it was an experience and it is what it is. I don't understand why a lot of us, we harp on ourselves that, hey, I did something wrong. I need to fix this.
Right.
Why?
Well, that comes back to the meaning. So we assign a meaning, and then out of that meaning comes an identity. This thing happened because it meant this, and therefore I something. So we're forming our identity, and then our identity forms our experience. Right? So then it creates a void. It creates a vacuum. So we're walking around hoping that somebody else will affirm us, which is backwards. To your point. If we're walking into a room hoping that people are going to like us, how's that go? Right. I think we're like, I don't know. Maybe some of you have never had that experience. I know both of us have had that experience, walking into the room and feeling all like, hope people like me, and if you've never had the experience, good for you. I think most of us have, right? Moments of insecurity, and you don't want to acknowledge it. Why? Because it's not like, this is not your most glorious moment by any means, right? But I want to loop back to closure seeking machine and the emotional patterns being a loop, right? And so for an emotion to process and be released, you have to sit with it and allow it to close the loop. And so oftentimes when it comes to trauma, then, which is really, when I say these, like, I don't mean to simplify or reduce the experience that people have, right, to something simplistic. But simply put, trauma is an unfinished emotional loop. And because of that, the brain is always trying to go back and finish it. Unconsciously, we're looking to close the loop, but consciously, we're averse to the pain. Because to close the loop, we have to go back into the moment of the most significant pain, right? Which is where we created a defense mechanism and now have been trying to shield ourselves and compensate throughout our life. for the trauma that's internal, an internal wound of some sort. And another, another piece on trauma, because a lot of people think I don't have trauma, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. Name calling on a playground in elementary school, like elementary school ages. So young kids being called names on a playground without for like 6 months. Over a course of 6 months, right? How common is that? The kid, like kids are ruthless. Kids can be just
About to say brutal, man.
mean, right? Just name calling though. Nothing physical, just some kind of verbal insult. Sustained over time, about 6 months, has the same effect neurologically as one event of rape. Right?
And think
So
about
we
that.
look at it. Yeah, go ahead.
Most kids are bullied from anywhere from kindergarten, pre-K, all the way up to high school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then take into account too if you had some form of an abusive parent, right? And
Of course.
again, it's like, well, I don't want to say bad about mom. Well, no, just own it, right? It's not about judging and criticizing them, but you have to. The first step is always the acknowledgement, and that's where it takes courage. And that's why vulnerability takes great courage, which leads to strength, right? Because it's hard to acknowledge what was actually bad, what was actually painful. So maybe it was on the playground, maybe it was at school, or maybe it was actually in the home. Somewhere, somehow, most of us are carrying trauma. And it leads to a compensation mechanism throughout life. And a compensation is a drain of energy. So when you go out to accomplish more, you don't have the capacity internally to accomplish your goals because your inner being, your energetic being is compensating. It's at a deficit and then it's trying to reach, right? And that's the struggle then when it comes back to discovering your calling. Your calling requires you to have that, right? It's the higher self is meant to achieve the calling, but our current self is weighed down with this baggage. But the good news is you can be free of it. Trauma does not
Hey,
mean you're stuck with it, right? But if you deny it, you will carry it forever. Denial will only lead to more baggage and more bondage. But acknowledgement, yes, I'm carrying baggage and I'm tired. It's one of the most profound moments a man can have, I think, is I'm tired. Because it's not manly to say, I'm tired. I'm burned out. But say it now before you're fried and you're collapsed on the ground, right? And if you are, still say it. Now is the time. It doesn't matter where you find yourself. Now is the time to have the honest acknowledgement of where you're at, what you need, so that you can, so that you can find yourself and reclaim your own energy and reclaim and ultimately and heal and grow, right? When you heal, your energy is restored to you. And then it's an exponential equation the other way. So to loop in also the word repentance, right? A lot of times we think means feel bad. I should feel bad or ashamed, which is one of the great tragedies of just some unfortunate religious teaching, right? Is like that repentance means feel bad or ashamed. That's kind of this puritanical worldview. But if you go further into the Eastern teaching, the Eastern fathers of the church speak that if repentance is a change of thinking, it's a change of being, right? So it's a change of state. It's not, it's a change of direction. We're turning away from the darkness towards light, towards God, right? And receiving healing, receiving grace, receiving goodness, right? But we have that the most difficult choice that's hard to acknowledge sometimes, but the most difficult choice is actually to be willing to receive good. Because so many of us
yes.
have a bad self image and we think we don't deserve it. And so then we
Well,
don't receive it because we only receive what we think we deserve. That's the filter through which life comes.
there you go. That was beautifully said. Because we always have negative thoughts about who we are, where we are, and we're comparing ourselves.
Hmm.
And we need to detach that negative autonomy, and be in the state of positivity. Be in the
Hmm.
state that good things are coming, that good things are already here, that they exist, that we deserve more. So my second question for you, bud.
All right.
What's the most pain you ever been in that wasn't physical?
Well, how do you describe that? Comes the question.
I mean, I could tell you fluently it's the pain of having people in a room that you love but not wanting to be there. Feeling isolated in that moment, wanting to
Mm,
die, not feeling enough, not knowing what to do next, not feeling successful. What is success? What is happiness when it's just
mm,
not? It's not a constant. All these things are not a constant. That's what I've learned. And
okay.
I've learned that you gotta let go. That things will happen in its own time and place. That you are enough. That anything you put your mind to, you could achieve it. But that state of loneliness, desperation, depression, sinking anxiety, being on the road and just like I want to steer to the left
Mm,
and see what I could hit.
mm,
That's
hmm.
it wasn't love. It wasn't self love.
No.
And
Right.
if you don't have self love, especially as a man, you can't achieve anything.
No. No. And so the opposite has been what I've known quite intimately, which is self-loathing, right? And looking for anything to numb myself to the experience of life because I hated living, right?
Hmm.
And definitely have had some bizarre experiences of enough like inner pain leading to a situation where I felt like physically felt like I'd been dragged over a field of boulders, even though physically nothing had happened, but just being in the body as well starting to reflect just the pain that I was feeling internally. Um, and it was kind of through that it brought me to enough of a crisis of decision of this can't, I've got to find a reason, right? But it started with the acknowledgement. It started with actually beginning to feel like I can acknowledge, or I could, at that time, start to acknowledge, okay, I'm in pain. Didn't fully acknowledge it, but it was enough to just realize, okay, I'm in pain. I've been denying it because I thought I shouldn't be in this pain, shouldn't be in this state of internal pain because because simply you're just not supposed, right? It's not allowed. It's not the way I was raised. It's not allowed. You just don't. You just can't, right? You've got Jesus. That's all you need. You shouldn't be feeling that. It's like, well, I have Jesus now more than ever because I went through it, because I acknowledged it. And it was in those moments of darkness that I find God. There's actually in the Psalms it says deep cries out to deep, right? And it's because in the depths of our own pain, in the depths of our own darkness, is when we can most clearly cry out to God and He understands it. Is something that I think we forget. Because too often we create a worldview and a view of God where people sometimes say, "I don't believe in God." I'm like, I don't blame you. What God do you not believe in, right? Let's discuss this. And I hear a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I don't believe in that God either. And I had to go through on a whole nother level. I had to go through a crisis of faith and realize, well, what, right? It brought me to that question as well. Do I believe in God? Well, not the God that I had in my mind, because I realized that was very unhealthy. And I'd formed that view of God based on humans, right? And here's the thing: is all too often we base our view of God on our parents,
Okay.
right? And that can speak for itself, right? What was going on? It was not a place. It was not a good view, not a great, right? It was just, again, I don't want to believe in a God that's punitive, that makes me feel bad, right? That doesn't allow me to actually just feel depressed, even suicidal, right? And just hate my life completely. But when I was able to actually go there and sit in it, that was the beginning of my healing journey, right? So it's one of the most radical moments, excuse me, even though it wasn't this it's not sensational, right? It's hard for me to pinpoint when exactly that happened, but I was going through a really just a long dark night of the soul that had built and accumulated. And even a decade later, and more now. But it was like a decade later, a couple of years ago, that I was looking back at that and realizing in new ways the depth of the pain. Because at the time I wasn't able to deal with it in, you
Mm.
know, to the full extent. But why I'm sharing all that is just because to the degree that we're able to just acknowledge the pain that we're in it's like if you can just get a 1 degree gap, a 1 degree difference, it's enough to start shifting the momentum in your life. That's, again, you can change by 1%. That will change. That'll compound over time, right? It'll compound over the years. And sometimes we're in a rush because we feel like, I can't live another day like this. Well, don't live tomorrow. Live today 1% better than yesterday. But don't expect it to be this overnight transformation, because that's a lie. Unfortunately, that lie has been marketed in the self-development world of like, just do this. All you need is new habits, and you're going to be Jeff Bezos. All the, it's like the 5 a.m. club and all these kind of things that are funny little like shticks, because it's easy to just get attached to, oh, just do this thing. Wake up at 6 a.m. or wake up at 5 a.m. or wake up at 4 a.m. Like every day, and that's going to make you successful. It's not. If you feel right, it's what's going to help, like, because success needs to be defined as well. And I believe success is in the pursuit of your calling, because your calling is it's an infinite game. It's not like, oh, reached my call, like called, click, hung up, right? My calling called and I answered and we had a great conversation. Now we're done, right? No, it's always calling you. It's this eternal continuum, because your calling is also your higher self reaching out to you across time and space. As Carl Jung
Yeah.
says, the future self reflects upon the current self. And there's a lot of fascinating nuance to that, because part of that is that we're actively deciding that future self right now. But if we're not conscious of that active decision, the active decision becomes unconscious, which sounds counterintuitive, like sounds backwards, right? Is it even active anymore? It's still active, just like your breathing and your heartbeat is active, but it's unconscious, right? So if we allow that process of active future decision to be unconscious, all it's going to do is repeat yesterday. And if yesterday sucked, you've got to become conscious of the future self you are deciding in this moment. Is he just going to be kind of this shallow, empty shell who's given up on life because why bother, right?
Mm. Seen a
Or
lot of
right,
guys
or
like
is it
that.
more like, yeah, or is it more like the situation I was in, where I was just like, I'm going off a cliff. Right? Something's got to stop. I'm going off a cliff and it's not going well.
You
You
know,
know?
I have to say, like, I'm impressed. Um, One of my biggest role models is my father, and battling cancer for the last 7 years,
Mm,
not giving up, still trying to figure out his life after
mm,
retirement from the NYPD. It's a toll on him physically,
mm,
mentally, spiritually.
mm,
But I think in that suffering, he got closer to his family. That's for sure. We developed a
mm.
better relationship during a crisis.
Yes.
That's something that's a blessing. Thank you. Thank you for a higher being. Thank you, God, and thanks for people that were there being supportive. I can't imagine being in that situation, right? But he still was able to take care of his family with what he can do. He's still being as supportive as he can. He makes my mom breakfast in the morning, packs her
Mm,
lunch, gets her coffee ready. Still trying to be that father figure for my mom and us. And I respect that, and it shows, like, all right, if this guy is almost in his 60s and he's not stepping down, why are we stepping down on our dreams? Why are we giving up? Why are we just going
right.
to a 9 to 5 and living? This
Mm-hmm.
is it. Let me
Mm,
have kids because society says so. Let me just get somebody just because I want to settle down. Oh, you're cute enough. Do you actually know her? Does she actually know the real you? Or you just
do
tell her
you
I'm
know
fine?
do you know the
Oh,
real you? That's the crux of it. Yeah, absolutely. Are you doing it just to try to appease other expectations? Are you doing it just because you want to try to make other people happy in the desperate hope that somehow that'll make you happy? If you get other people's approval, maybe you'll approve of yourself, but it'll never happen, right? And we all know that. If you're seeking approval from others, you inherently do not approve of yourself. Painful, right? Painful. So why acknowledge it? Isn't it easier to ignore that pain? Isn't it easier to just keep doing the cycle? And then another thing that I see men do is just go work hard because that's another way to numb. Maybe it's not
Ooh.
drugs, maybe it's not alcohol, but it sure as hell can be work, you know? And then we praise people in society that have made tons of money and we listen to them say, oh, yeah, you just hustle and grind like me and you can be rich too. Well, what are you hustling and grinding so hard to get away from? And now you have money and you think that that justifies an unhealthy existence, and it doesn't. There's nothing wrong with hard work. There's nothing wrong with hustle, right? But everything needs to be come into alignment and into balance. And if you're doing it to escape yourself, one of my favorite quotes is, a place cannot save you, for there is no place where you can escape from yourself.
Damn, I want to play devil advocate on that one.
All right, let's hear it.
I mean, in escapism with different cultures and settings, I would justify stating that you learn more of you because you don't understand another person's culture, food, state of being, uh, just habit. Like when I've been to Europe, totally laid back. I
Mm-hmm,
was like, wow, this is what life really should be about.
mm-hmm,
Cultivating different relationships, networking, being around people you love, how they have 3 hour breaks
mm-hmm.
and they're with their bosses drinking wine in the middle of the day.
Yeah, right. Radically different.
But then when you're in the Western civilization, it's like, did you do 80 hours this week? You did it. You didn't even finish the task I gave you since Monday. We gotta reprimand you.
America, aka the center of the universe. Yes. It's pretty bad. Other cultures
But
speak
I
our
was like,
language. We don't speak theirs. They know our new current events and their own, and we know nothing about the rest of the world, let alone our own current events. It's, it's, we're not in a good state, you know, and I think it comes from the culture, the society can only reflect the average of the individuals. And an average of our individual culture tragically has come to a point where it's normal to not be self-aware, right?
yeah, ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss, especially when it comes to uncomfortable emotion. Find a way to escape. So, I mean, yeah, back to, I just want to pause and just give, just appreciate your dad too. It just sounds like that's been such it's a significant crisis and a journey and something that he's handled with, grace and with courage from everything you've told me. So that means a lot. I appreciate that and appreciate him. Uh,
Thank you.
and crisis, as you said, crisis becoming a gift is a beautiful thing. It's like the word emergency, the root of it being emergence. It brings out the real you.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
what do we do? All we can really do is prepare, which is to become a better version of ourselves. I would state that as a truer version of ourselves, because my foundational belief on this is that there's nothing in us inherently lacking, right? So it's not like, oh, we need personal development, we need
Mm.
personal discovery, because it's not about adding more, It's about removing the layers of baggage and muck and garbage that have coated us and grimed us, right? So you got to get out your scouring pads, you got to get out your degreaser, and you got to pull your muck boots on because it's nasty. And to circle back on what you said too, playing devil's advocate, saying that going and visiting other cultures was beneficial for you, I'd say that that's not escapism. That's exploration. That's different,
Okay.
right? But escapism is trying to escape from yourself. But when you're exploring, a different area, so there's nothing wrong with visiting a different place. In fact, I think it's one of the best things that young men can do, or people, period, right?
Need to
But
do, yeah.
get out of your, okay, so I'm in Colorado Springs here in Colorado now, but I used to live in Pueblo for many years, and anybody who knows Pueblo, there's people down there that have never left the city limits. And I don't say that like there's a few. It's on a regular basis, and that's part of the weirdness of the Pueblo dynamic is there's too many people that just think like Pueblo's the world. And it's actually terrifying because Pueblo has a lot of great aspects to it. Okay, it has phenomenal potential in certain areas, and I think in some places they're more forward thinking with their use of land and of certain resources than even this bigger city of Colorado Springs has been. But you gotta get out, right? There's also a lot of problems in Pueblo, and I think a lot of it comes from just insular culture, right? Culture is great, but you can't have insular culture. You've got to get out and experience and grow because what it's going to do is it's going to reflect you back to yourself. When you're in the same status quo, it's really easy to just sit and stay and be the same. And what that comes back, there's this idea of like social ecosystems. And you see this in families especially. A really fun rabbit hole to go down is studying toxic family dynamics, right? And there's multiple different archetypes of them, and I couldn't list them off from memory right now, but I've studied these things because I was trying to make sense of my past and my experience, and they were all rather freakishly eye-opening to that what was
To the
happening for
T.
me. Oh yeah. And toxic, yeah, so especially like in a healthy family, you want to you want to go explore, you want to go grow as an individual, they're going to encourage you to do that. In an unhealthy family, they need everybody to sit in their little spot because they're all fulfilling a function of this unhealthy machine, and the machine must have each person fulfilling their unhealthy function. So a classic, like if anybody understands narcissism, and I mean not just like casually based on TikTok, but I mean actually putting in a little bit of study into what is narcissism. One of the classic roles that because a narcissist cannot exist in a vacuum. That's why they get so much attention, is because narcissists are very abusive because they have to pull people into their orbit and have somebody to kind of siphon energy from, be vampiric, abusive, and all these things. But there's always a golden child. The golden child receives all the false adulation of the narcissist, which is really just self-adulate, right? It's all perverted and twisted. But the golden child has to exist, and there has to be the scapegoat. Because the narcissist, the interesting thing about and why it's worth studying is not so you can sit there and be like, oh, yeah, so and so's a narcissist, right? Like, man, I knew it. I knew I didn't like my boss. He's a narcissist, right? Look at the traits and then look in the mirror. That's how you grow, right? That's shadow work, and we'll talk more about that because it's not today's topic, but it fits, right? Shadow work is to really look at yourself honestly, take honest stock. And instead of going and accusing somebody else of the negative traits, because that's projection. Projection is to, right, negative or positive, or like there's all kinds of forms of projection, but ultimately it's just like, just remember, one of the simplest reminders we can give ourselves is it doesn't mean what you think it means. But go look at yourself in the mirror, right? So narcissism needs a golden child and it needs a scapegoat. And if the scapegoat tries to leave, what's going to happen? Everybody's going to try to pull them back in, the narcissist and the golden child, because if the scapegoat leads, the golden child's in trouble, right? So in a toxic family, depending on how many people were in your family, it can be quite a lot more roles, but um, it's there. So once you try to leave, exit your role, it destabilizes the social ecosystem. That's what I'm right. So social ecosystems. So leaving is one of the best things you can do, because when you're in the social ecosystem, even a healthy one, if you're in a healthy one, you'll be encouraged to leave. But even in a healthy one, it's good to leave, because then you can be challenged, because you're breaking out of status quo. You're breaking out of where you're comfortable, which is really where we just get used to being our habitualized self, right? Instead of our true self, we're just, I'm habitually this person, whatever that is, the identity that we take on. Because it's rather terrifying when you start to get down into the basement of the human psyche, right? And understand the mechanics of it and the way that we form our identity and the way that then that forms and determines our life. And to break the cycle of identity formation and redirect it in the healthy way is one of the most critical skills any person can learn, period. Right? I believe emphatically. Obviously, I'm getting a little fired up here, right? It's just like if you don't understand that, you're at the mercy of your own operating system. It's like not knowing how to use your damn computer. But we all know how to use our computers better than we understand our own brains, right? So what gives? Well, I think it comes back to, trying to loop things back around here, I think it really does, though, genuinely come back to the discomfort of sitting with actual emotion, uncomfortable emotion. But by opening up to it, that's the key to also finding path out of it. So, all right, let's bring it back on track a little bit here. That's your job. I'm going to throw that into your court because I've been
Sweet.
talking too much.
I was I was gonna actually state, how would you suggest men should heal? What are different techniques? Like I know for myself personally, therapy. I've go with therapy. I used to have two therapists, and I used to do it weekly. And then I would sit with my thoughts, and I would do grounding. For you guys that don't know, grounding is you take off your shoes
Mm-hmm.
and your socks, and you soak your feet in soil. And I just
Mm-hmm.
meditated. I just kind of meditated to the point of no phone, no headphones on, no music. I just sat with my thoughts, like, and just some breathing exercises, trying to understand and let things just kind of flow, let it come to me. Like, what am I currently feeling? Am I assigning any kind of meaning? What can I let go? What am I taking things personally?
Mm,
And that's a big thing. Like victimization, guys. I get it. Where it's like a defense mechanism where somebody lashes out on us, like we take it personally. Don't. Sometimes it's just a hierarchy of things. That hey, this is a job. Things have to be a set of order. But if you don't want that 9 to 5 job, that corporate life, figure out the goal to becoming an
right,
entrepreneur, your own person.
right.
And in order to do that, what emotions are you not letting yourself let go of?
Mm,
Not talking about, not expressing. Like I write poetry. Speaking of,
mm.
I have a pretty sick poem. Would you want to hear it, mate?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. So I was just in my own thoughts yesterday, and I just really was ecstatic because it's been a while since I was able to write. And I'm
Mm,
not sure if it was me being uncomfortable because I was accused of things and I
mm,
was in my own head and not feeling confident and not feeling good enough. And I've been battling with that for the last 3 weeks. Part of the reason I haven't developed any contact on reality dreamers, guys. We're all human, we're all flawed. So I wanted to be open with that. Like, hey, sometimes you have to really sit
yes.
in them in the mud and try to work it out. How do you work it out?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I did grounding, breath work. I started working out. And the
Mm,
result is I started being able to create beautiful things. I was able to
mm,
write again. So this just kind of came out of nowhere, and it was something to laugh at. Because when you're discovering yourself, guys, you have to have fun. That's the most important concept I think a lot of people forget in being a man or a woman is, are you having fun with your life? Because if you're having fun with your life, you're going to be happy. And through that amusement, I think it will drive you to be 1% better. Like, hey, I was able to destroy generational trauma. I was able to be creative in my a healthy space where people allow me to be me, and I got to discover who that is. That's why I love poetry so much. So let me rip this band-aid off.
Let's do it.
Take a drag as we touch grass. Hazy eyes, a sudden thunderstorm shower upon Central Park. Raindrops drips, face glistening, you're grinning. Uncontrollable laughter during summer days. We took another drag as you asked you to dance. For in the rain and in the moment, we were invincible. The moment passed, decaying fast. At least it will last for eternity. Cosmic energy through Baja Blast. I just chuckled to myself. I got to be me, and it was so liberating.
Mm.
You know, I'm not saying I'm going to be the next Charles Bukowski, maybe, but I'm saying in creating this, I'm a writer. In creating this, I'm a
Yes.
poet. In creating this, I'm a content creator. In creating this, I'm going to be influential. And that's forming my positive thoughts into state of being, into being vulnerable and who I am.
And having that creative outlet of energy, which is something that once again, so as part of part of this process of healing, right, is yes, have a creative outlet of energy.
Mhm.
And a creative outlet inherently cannot be forced. And a beautiful aspect of that is that we, man, back to just American culture that we live in, is so, with all the push, 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 grind, 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 it's so push. And it's beautiful to have something that forces you to no longer push. Because, right, if you try to force and push your poetry, how's it go?
Dude, it's awful. It's like grinding two cement blocks together and you could hear the friction.
Right, right. It just does not work that way, right? Dance, watercolor art have been some things from me, right? You cannot push dance, and dance is powerful martial arts too, and I love the interweaving of those two things. So Kali, Tai Chi, and ballroom dancing. And ballroom dancing, or just dancing of any sort, is a great way to connect in a deeper way with your partner because it's sub-rational. It's not like you're going to sit down and try to discuss things and solve your problems, right? But when you flow and enter the state of flow on the dance floor, and when you first start, you probably won't. It'll probably be very frustrating. If you've heard the joke that a tandem bicycle is a divorce on wheels, because it requires two people to be in alignment and be in flow.
Hmm.
Because if you're not, it is so frustrating and you just hate the other person. But isn't that a reflection of the rest of your relationship? Right? You've just created boundaries and barriers and cut a hole in your sheet. Whoop. Because what? Because this is not, because you're not really connected at that point. So go find a way you can connect with yourself and connect with the other person, and then it happens in flow. And in that flow is also a divine connection, because inspiration comes from God, right? It comes down into us, and we also have this opportunity to ask and to receive. And so inspiration comes, and it comes in a way, the energetic flow of the human being, it actually, our energy comes out through the top. So it's not like it's a download through our head. We're oftentimes waiting for like some kind of clear answer. Ah, well, God must not exist. He didn't tell me. And the people that say God did tell them, I'm always pretty hesitant about that too, because I'm like, oh, really? Well, because the language of inspiration is not rational. It's through the other layers of our being, through the body, which if you're looking at it through the lens of like chakras, which each chakra has a different association with energies of the body. And then you get up to the head finally, and there's some like, oh, finally we get to deal with thoughts a little bit. But you're carrying all this other energy around with you, and we're energetic beings. So all this to get back to just being in a state of flow, because being in a state of flow alone can just get your head out of the way. And the beautiful thing is your body is designed to heal.
Yes.
And that, right, and that is one of those points I just want to underline, because it's so I want this to be uplifting as much as we're dealing with difficult things. And I know that I have an intense voice. So funny, like speaking of, I always think, oh, I'm fairly relaxed on these calls, and then I get done and my wife's like, man, you sounded like you're yelling. I was like, really? Not
They
quite
got
yelling,
him
but she's
down.
like, you just sounded really intense. At times I thought you were getting angry, and I'm like, no, I'm just getting passionate at times. But so anyway, I want to state, that I want to encourage everybody who listens to this. I want you to be encouraged and uplifted, and to know that it's like, as dark as it gets, and I know the darkest depths, there's so much hope in it. And in the
Mm.
darkest deeps is when the light will shine brightest for you and to you. And also, the body is designed to heal. So when you can get into flow state, you're going to allow things to process and to heal naturally. So again, you can't force healing. And so that's a key, right? Meditation. So let's get to that in just a moment. But another great one, surfing. I love surfing. And it's a perfect analogy for the flow of life, because literally you're in flow. You get on a surfboard, and if you're not in flow, the wave, you're just hitting water, right? You're not going to stand on that surfboard if you can't just be present, fully present. And that's part of being in flow, is being fully present. And another thing about being fully present that's beautiful is, in the present moment is eternity. Because all of time is more of like, it's more of a continuum and a vortex than it is some linear thing like a scroll that's been rolled out, right? And that's how, excuse me, we also have this opportunity to heal childhood wounds in the present moment, right? Because you can actually heal the past in this present moment, and you change the future in this present moment. Because again, we're deciding that future self now, in the now, right?
Through
Into
the
the
state of being.
future. And in that future self that is growing and healing, we're also healing the wounded child and bringing them, maturing them as well. And that's part of the key of really stepping into your manhood, right? Is by maturing and healing that inner boy that we all experience and know what it's like to step into that little boy. It's like suddenly he has the wheel, right? Suddenly we're cruising down the highway of life, and you think, oh, I'm going to take this exit that I've always wanted to take, that's going to take me to where I want to go. And all of a sudden, why? Right? Self-sabotage, all these kind of things. That's the experience of it. But
But I think
wanted to,
most people don't understand, like, in suffering there's growth.
yes.
I mean, yes, like we talked a lot about some hard obstacles and situations, but in those situations there's experiences, and through those experiences there's this growth. You
Mm-hmm.
have to find the defined outcome, the positive outcome, and through your thinking is what shall be. So if you're had a bad experience and you're not sure how to deal with it, maybe that experience was for you to help somebody else, as awful as that is. Maybe that experience made you stronger. Maybe that experience leads you to a business idea, writing a book,
Mm-hmm.
being creative in that state of
Mm-hmm.
flow, bringing about your passion. What is that purpose? And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. They just get, oh, this happened to me, and they start shriveling up, and they start constantly in that loop where
Mm-hmm.
they're thinking about it, or I want to let go. I want to let go of this baggage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the whole victimization is because they're used to that comfort, because it's a state of knowing, hey guys, be in that state of unpredictable, not having any idea what to do. Be spontaneous.
Why, the phrase you just said too nails it. Why did this happen to me? happen to me. That's a victim statement. That's a disempowered statement, right? And so an empowering worldview, an empowering, perspective to adopt is, why is this happening for me? Right? And when you can start to realize that everything that you're experiencing is, apologize for the light going crazy right now, with a camera rather, but right, everything that is happening is for your growth and for your healing. As Einstein has this interesting quote, the most important decision we can make is whether we live in a benevolent or malevolent universe. It comes right back around to, what God do you believe in? There's people that say, I don't believe in God. I'm sorry, we all believe in some form of a God. There's always something somewhere that we've given power to. And that's why there's talk in the scripture of thou shalt have no idols, right? It's that you don't empower anything outside of God. And if God is God is within you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. It's your job to be present and engage with God, build a real connection there. And we can't do that if we're disempowering ourselves. So many people have a God of money, because how common is it to feel disempowered to money, right? And I love to bring that one up because it's so damn common. And it's even accepted, even amongst circles that say, oh, you can't serve God and mammon. And yet all I see is them serving money, which they call mammon, because they're terrified of it. And if you're scared of something, it has power over you, quite, simply, right? So before I riff on more tangents, I wanted to just loop back around to your question of, like, how do you heal? What are your methods, right? What was your original question? And you shared what you do, and I wanted to just circle back on that. But what was that original question?
Yeah, it's just like, what techniques do you have that that helped you in your healing process? Like, I shared
Techniques.
some of mine,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a bunch. I just think that it's having to do with finding your passion. So, what's your passion in order for you to discover that you had to discover your healing?
And I think that, so back to even the poetry, excuse me, your example there was a cycle of new healing and growth, and then you wrote more poetry. Sometimes, and I think the process here is to heal, and then you'll receive the inspiration, and the passion will follow, right? Sometimes you might be in a state, and I want to speak to anybody out there who's in this state of not even knowing, I don't even know what my passion is. And I know that state. I know that position to feel so damn empty that life is just, that there's nothing. I mean, there was a time when I'd just go out into the woods and, like, beat a tree with my bare fist because I wanted to feel something, right? Because I felt so numb to everything that I was like, and trying desperately to somehow have an experience of life, and I just would get so raged, really, just like, and people talk about seeing red as, like, that was the experience. I'm just so angry. I have to go out somewhere by myself because I didn't want to hurt anybody else, but I just so angry and didn't know how to deal with all this emotion. But interestingly, even in that, there was a way for me in an unconscious, or like an unknowing way, to begin to process. So I'm like, I'm not even against that thing, as like, but to take it then and to start to have an actual process, which is always an obsession for me, because I never want to leave anybody feeling like, oh, that was nice, but what do I do?
Mm.
Right? Nice
Yeah.
idea. I'm not going to be another motivational speaker, because we don't need more motivational speakers, that get you all worked up and like, yeah, now what? Just do it. Do what? Right? Do what? When I was in that state, that message is just, it's insulting and would make me angry, because I'm like, do what? What do I do? The first step is to acknowledge
Mm.
I'm in pain. All right? And that first step is so beautiful, because it takes a tremendous amount of courage to acknowledge the pain. Because we think sometimes we misconstrue, courage with the lack or the absence of fear. And it's far from the case, right? And really, there's even this ideas of like eliminating or overcoming, right? You conquer is actually the word that I do like. Conquer means it's now yours. It's part of your dominion when you've conquered something. So our job is to conquer our lizard brain, right? To slay the dragon, as I talk about. The dragon very much being that lizard brain, which I think is fascinating, the correlation there. So when we go to engage with the dragon's in our life, it's the fear, the lizard brain that runs these unconscious primal fears that can run our life into the ground, right? But we get the ability to conquer that, which is to harness it and make it a part of us. So acknowledgement is the first step, and acknowledgement takes great courage just to say, I am in pain, right? It's like if you have a broken leg, if you're going around saying, I'm fine, obviously you're not fine. You can't walk, right? What are we going to do about it? If you don't do anything about it, the bone will reset wrong, and then you're going to be maimed and crippled, right? Let's do something about it so that you can heal, but you can't heal if you don't acknowledge. So the first step is to take that courageous step to act in spite of fear, right? Back to courage. The meaning of courage is you take action in the face of fear. You can feel the fear, and it can come all the way up to the point where you feel like it's going to, like you're going to drown in it, and you still move forward. And that's what determines a hero. The heroes are not people that never experienced fear. Those are uncompelling stories. That's why everybody got bored with Superman. All this power, there's nothing compelling until they introduced kryptonite, right? But the compelling stories, the compelling heroes are always the ones who act in spite of fear. I would love Lord of the Rings. When Aragorn goes to the Black Gates, they don't know what the outcome is. They're just going to go act in spite of. Because they don't even know if Frodo's still there with the ring. They don't know what's going on. They just know we're going to do everything we can. That's it. And if it costs us everything, so be it. Better to die a hero than to die a coward. Right? And the coward succumbs to the fear. The coward is a victim to the fear. Well, I couldn't do it because, right? So in the acknowledgement, the beautiful thing here is in the acknowledgement of I'm in pain, you actually are, it's the very first step of reclaiming your own power. Because we're disempowered when we're not acknowledging and we're victimizing. It's incredibly everything else around you has power when you're in that state. But when you say I'm in pain, you've taken the first step, you've defined, you've acknowledged, you're starting to apply the incredible cognitive capacity that you have in your mind, which is designed for your success, and starting to harness that and apply it in the proper way, because it will work against you if you don't understand it. That's the problem that we run into, right? So we acknowledge and then sit with it. I'm in pain. Now you sit in that pain. It's like a tea bag. You got to let it steep in the hot water. There's actually an Irish poet, I forget, maybe Keats. Here I'm quoting his saying, and I don't remember his name exactly, but he says a man should be like tea, his real strength coming out when he gets in hot water. Right? Great little quote on this, but it's just the same kind of thing. There is no opportunity to rush this process. You can't push through it, right? You have to acknowledge I'm in pain and then just sit in it. And that's where then techniques come in that are very helpful, like meditation. And meditation can be something that's like, oh, what is that? I'm gonna do I gotta go get some bowls and like dance around with some like, dream catchers or something like that and turn into a hippie? No, it has nothing to do with that. Some people meditate that way. No, look, sorry. If that would, right, so go ahead, like meditate however you want to meditate. This is not my thing, right? And that form is definitely not my cup of tea. But the point of meditation means to become familiar with, right? And so meditation quite simply can just be sitting in silence. and taking every thought captive, as it says in scripture. Take every thought captive. And we have an opportunity to do that in meditation, which then separates or becomes differentiated from prayer, which a lot of people, and especially in my background, I felt like, well, if I'm having problems, I got to just pray about it and it'll get better. And the problem with that approach to life that I had was I was still a victim, and I was very deeply convicted at times when later. And what made a real shift in my own mentality and approach to this was reading in the Gospels where Jesus is healing people, and he says, "Take up your bed and walk." Right? Your faith has made you whole. And I realized I was praying all wrong because I was praying as a victim. It's like that song, "Jesus, take the wheel," and he's sitting there saying, "No, you can drive. I
Yeah.
gave you that power, and I want you to utilize it." Right? And it's so there's synergy, the Greek synergia, right, which just means a mingling. There's a mingling of energy. It's us aligning with with the divine, with God, with God's will, and miracles happen. But the miracle is our own belief, which comes back to, what's your set point? Do you believe that you deserve bad things in life, right? Because you have low self-esteem, a bad self-image. That's a negative. That's right. That's not going to serve you. It's going to tear you apart. But we have to shift our belief to know that I am worthy of love. I am worthy of good, right? But we're not going to get there until we've just processed the negative state that is holding us back from that. And that can be those emotional states, that emotion. So what's it look like to process it? Well, meditation, to become familiar with, can be as simple as just becoming familiar with what are the thoughts that are actually running in your brain. So a favorite form of meditation for me is to just sit there in silence and put on a timer for at least 5 minutes and just be conscious of the thoughts. That's it. And stop them from running off the rails with all, "You're a loser, you're a stupid piece of shit, nobody likes you," right?
Yeah.
Why even bother? They're gonna find you out, you imposter, all the crazy stuff. And it's like, am I here because doing this because I don't have those thoughts? Absolutely not. I'm here doing this because I take action in spite of those thoughts, because I've gained the capacity to do battle with them, right? So the kingdom of heaven is within you, and the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force, is another verse in scripture that can really sound confusing. But when you apply it in this way, that's the place of violence. If there is no violence with it, which is to really have force, to go into the darkness of your own mind, and what are the autonomic thoughts that are just running, because we have, like, I don't remember, like 10-20,000 thoughts a day, and it's all like mostly negative, is what the general studies show. And how do you even start shifting your thoughts? Are you just going to try to think positive? Thinking is a joke, because usually it's not grounded in any reality. So it's just trying to put a band-aid on a cesspool, and it's not going to do you much good. Here's a little paper mache boat on a cesspool. No, it's just the acidity is just going to vaporize it, right? You got to get down in there and realize we got to clean this thing out.
Yeah.
And that starts with the acknowledgement of what is, because you cannot change something until you acknowledge that it is broken. You cannot fix what you have not acknowledged to be broken. And then when you get to the stage of, all right, how do I fix it? You can't even rush that. It's the bizarre irony. You have to just sit and be present to it. And the best way to do that is through a meditation process. And then also implement a healing, right? Facilitate healing, which is that process that we talked about last week, right?
Yeah.
The system I have, which you mentioned therapy too, but it's like basically a therapy process to take what is it that's getting in your way, what is these sticking points that we generally term limiting beliefs, right? And what do you do with it? What do you do with the predominant negative thoughts that cloud you? Because it's like you get through the haze and you're gonna find a few, like, rocks or boulders. You know what I mean? Like, you get through
Let's
the
call them
haze of all the
Legos.
Legos.
Stepping on the Lego blocks. You know what I mean? Like if they're
Oh
all over
yeah.
the floor.
so funny because my living room floor is covered in Legos right now, and I walked across it in the dark last night. And that's yeah, exactly. It's like you know. But yeah, you get through the haze and you start to realize but what I'm getting is there's a couple of, I mean, the idea of the seven deadly sins, right? Like you get down in there and you realize, okay, there's a couple of things that are the main sticking points in my life. I'm not good enough. That's just right. For instance, right? Something that you and I both have struggled with, and I know so many other people do. I'm not
Yeah.
good enough. That's so if you just distill it down. So your job by sitting with it, you're allowing it to distill down to what's at the root of it. So in the sitting with it, you can question it, and that's really what the healing process is to start to challenge it, challenge this belief I'm not good enough, and put it to the question it, because oftentimes it really can't hold up to scrutiny, and then begin to start to look for evidence of the right, determine what is the positive truth, which is usually the is contrary to it, or some form of the opposite. I'm just kind of going high level at a summary kind of level, right? So you distill down what is this limiting belief, and then you flip it into a positive. What is the positive? The truth, right? I'm incapable. No, you are capable. And then you go and look for evidence in your life. I'm not good enough. Well, really, is that the case? Because look at all the times and places you have been good enough. And then what you're doing, it's the beautiful process of the leap of faith, and then it can be supported by belief of the brain going and going, oh, well, now that you've recalibrated me, you're right. Because it can be that stupid sometimes because it's just running the program that we fed it, that we're not even aware that we fed it sometimes. We fed it unconsciously. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And then it's just like, oh, well, okay, well, here's all the evidence. And then you shift it, you arrest control with violence, you take control and you direct it in the proper way. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, yeah, there's all that evidence sitting over there. We just didn't, because the RAS is the filter, right? The filtration center of your brain. If you're, just filters it all out. It only brings to your conscious awareness what it deems pertinent based on your belief systems. So we are powerfully capable, self-deluding beings.
And you gotta like do it slowly, guys. Like, what are your wins? That's what
Mm-hmm.
Peter told me and showed me the way. And it starts off small. Like my win was slowly starting my podcast. My
Mm-hmm.
win was slowly getting back into the gym. You know, it it compounds at
Mm-hmm.
1%.
Yeah, it does.
And it's just my win was getting up in the morning. It's another day. It's another day of being grateful that I'm alive, that I have food, that I have a family, that I have friends, that I'm meeting higher level people. That higher level people are gonna show me different paths. That I'm gonna discover new things. Being emotionally vulnerable is going to level you up.
Yes. Vulnerability will actually set you free because it takes vulnerability to acknowledge, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it brings up to the question, I pitched earlier too, which was you got to be careful when and where. What are your thoughts there? Let's talk about that
Mm.
for a minute, right? Because I think it's true, and a lot of guys have resistance here because, yeah, if you're vulnerable in the wrong situation with the wrong people, that can backfire, right? So what's the right? Let's we know what the bad is, so
Oh
let's
yeah.
you know. So my question to kick off with you here is like, what's the right? What's the good?
I mean, I got lucky. I got really lucky. It's just having that. Man, I'm gonna sound a little interesting. I have one friend in particular that I always think about. We complete each other's sentences. He is literally my soulmate as a man, and he's one of the first persons I was able to really express my full self to.
Hmm.
like we trust each other. Like there has to be a foundation, like some kind of relationship, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be acquaintances to friendship to, in the end, brotherhood. And in this like brotherhood or partnership with a female or male, etc., whatever y'all into, it's foundations. There's layers. So once you have that bond, give that trust a little bit. Be willing to open up first, because most of the times the other person isn't. They're gonna be just as closed off as you. They have a knife because they're ready to stab you in the back too. But if you show love, if you show kindness, respect, a mutual yearning to grow and understand and want to be a part of their lives, they're gonna eventually embrace you with open arms. What my friend Gabe was just amazing, kind-hearted individual.
Mm.
There was no hesitation. Um, Being in the arena with you, Peter, is another perfect example. It's just we developed a friendship through mentorship, and it was easy to talk to you. I think that's another one. Like, are there people that are easy to talk to? Are you able to open up to those kinds of people? And how they react on giving them something small? How are they
Mm-hmm.
able to listen to you vent? And are they critiquing that event? Are they, oh yeah, you're out of your mind? Like how do they interact during those key moments? I think it's crucial, right?
Mm-hmm.
You and Gabe are very similar. You just listened and acknowledged and embraced that pain with me
Mm.
and got me deeper into understanding what that kind of pain was and understanding like, hey, this pain, it happened, but it doesn't have to be a part of me.
Right.
I choose it to be a part of me in order to serve others.
Mm.
That's my gift to the world.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So me being vulnerable to you guys with suicide, depression, anxiety, etc., not being as successful as my other counterparts, it's constantly in my head for years, for over 18 years. And I would say the last 3 years was the time where I was able to heal.
Yeah.
Acknowledgement is the first step, but healing is going to the right people, having that right
Mm-hmm.
relationship with either a brother that's not family, or that if it happens to be family, God bless you, and just meeting the right people at the right time. It all opens up when you're ready to accept it. I tell people all the time, like, we met by faith. We knew each other for a few months. Things just weren't aligned for the both of us in our lifestyle, and then it just happened that, like, I firmly believe I was still almost over with my dark night of awakening. And then you gave me a call, and it just aligned itself,
Yep.
and then we evolved together.
Yep.
But it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, and I'm going to keep repeating that because I feel like society is always like, "Oh, hey, here's the
Right.
answers. Pay me." No, 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 no.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the other flip side of that is like, oh, you're not there yet? Here's a nice shovel of you know, guilt and shame. Oh, you said you were going to get better,
Yeah.
right? Oh, you said you were going to change, and you haven't changed. Right? May as well give up and roll over. Nah, never. Continue, right? Because when you make the
Well, I think
decision
it's
to
important to
change and
recognize.
grow, what's
What I was going to say, it's important to recognize that in your growth, you're going to fall.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
We were talking about Dante's Inferno on the first episode, where we're going up 2 or 3 layers of hell, and we just happen to tumble back down to 7, right? But that's okay. That's part of
mm-hmm,
growth. That's part of like understanding and discovering you. That's part of being emotionally vulnerable to your partner, to your
mm-hmm,
loved ones, to your
mm-hmm.
friends.
Yeah, and this interesting thing that happens is in the journey of growth, things enter a different dimension. We can only
Mm.
think in our own linear kind of dimension, right? There's But there's more happening than we have capacity to be aware of, and I believe that that is for our benefit, because if we were aware of it, our own pride would start to get in the way, right? So it can
Mm.
feel like we're falling because something deeper is being worked that it's best if we're just not even in the way of, right? So the most important thing you can do is when you do fall, you just get back up and you keep going, and you never identify with the fall. You never identify, I fell, therefore I'm a failure, right? The
Mm.
therefore is the critical thing you got to just cut out and kill. There's no, I fell.
Nip it in the butt. Yeah.
Yeah, now what? Right? Same thing. You acknowledge the pain. Now what? Now you have the opportunity to do something about it, to act on it, right? And then take the next step, take the next step. And as long as you just keep taking the right next step, you will grow. And you'll look back a year from now and you'll be like, wow. You look back 3 years from now, you'll be like, oh my gosh, right? You look back, I don't know, 10 years from now and you're like, holy shit, right? Life
Oh
is
yeah.
way different,
Yeah.
right? Everything's so radically different, and it's going to be in ways that you can't even comprehend now on this side of the journey. And that's the way it is, always, forever, right? There's always these new levels opening of awareness and awakening, and we're all on our own fractal journey. So back to like, how do you know, or like, how do you gauge where and when, or most importantly, who you can be vulnerable around, right? This is an issue I take with in the world of coaching. So I feel like there's so many coaches that are not just straight up, they're not safe, right? It's not safe to engage with them as a coach because they're not there for you, they're there for themselves. They think, oh,
Mm.
I'm great. I'm going to make you more like me so you can be great too, right? The personal development guru space is full of that kind of attitude as well. You want to be great, be like me because obviously I'm great, right? So then it becomes a rigid system, whereas personal discovery is organic and nuanced. And I have no place to say who you are, right? Because it's not about, right? So be weary of anybody who wants to make you in their own image because that's only God's work,
Mm.
right? We are all made in the image and likeness of God, and our job is to restore that image, right? It's like a painting. We're restoring the art, restoring the painting, restoring the grandeur and the glory that's been covered over what? With the doubt, the fear, all the garbage that we pick up as we walk through this life that's fraught with danger, you know? And why would we exist in such a world? Is an
I mean,
inevitable question. Why would God create such a world that's fraught with danger, where we so easily lose that divine image? It's because quite a simple answer, and we can talk more about this another time, but a simple answer is just quite simply because there's so much beauty in the process of reclaiming. Right? There's so much beauty in the process of going through that,
yeah.
you know. Um, and so who can you open up with? Well, you find people, you find that healthy brotherhood, and for men, we need brotherhood. Yes, in your relationship with your wife, with your partner, you want that as well. But you always are going to need a brotherhood. Always men need space that is sacred in that way, right? There's different
Yeah.
sacred spaces. One of those is for men to have their own space around other men who can hold that space because it's a different dynamic, right? It'll always be. It's a totally unique and important dynamic to have a space of brotherhood. Um, and you want people that are not going to judge you. They're not going to try to rush to fix it because they're uncomfortable. So you want to be around others who are willing to sit with their pain. So number one, if somebody else hasn't acknowledged their pain, they're probably not going to do well with yours because your pain is going to make them uncomfortable because they're uncomfortable with their own pain. That's why they're hiding from it, right? If they're in a rush to try to fix it and they're not willing to sit with their emotion, they're damn well not going to sit with yours, right? So I think the first thing for all of us is always to take the first step. We acknowledge our own pain, we sit with our own pain, and then I really believe that's like what you said, right? The steps align. You'll encounter the right next person and you'll know it without knowing it. You'll know there'll be a feeling, a sense of this is right. This is safe. And part of that safety is because this is also a person. I'd go further, right? It's someone who's safe to open up to, but also somebody who won't buy into my own bullshit. So when I do slip into victimhood, right, I want to be surrounded by the people who will not, exactly, they're
Wake you
not going to
up.
attack me, but they are going to attack that behavior. Hey, you're not
Yeah.
being yourself, right? That's the brotherhood. That's what it's about, is to hold you to the higher standard of, no, I know you're capable of more, right? And if I sympathize with, sympathy means to become like, which, right, that's the buddies at the bar who hang out and gripe, right? Nothing wrong with the bar. I'm just using that as an example, right? Whatever the drug of choice is that people engage
Mm.
with each other because they're interested in numbing, they're not interested in growing. You want to find the guys who are interested in growing and are going to hold you to that standard of growth so that we can all grow together. So that's, I think, the key of finding who, when, and where can you be vulnerable. And in marriage and in relationship, it's another dynamic as well. But there's a place of, I also believe this, vulnerability is different than looking for affirmation. If we go as men, if we are vulnerable around women because we want to get something from them, that's problematic. And so it's no longer her fault, it's yours. Right? That's the place
Yeah.
to go look at ourselves in the mirror and own. It's not her fault. She's not being abusive. She's just, of course, she's not going to trust us because we are actually being weak. There's a difference between weakness and vulnerability. Vulnerability is to say, this is my struggle, or this is my challenge, this is the pain that I've gone through, rather than saying, like, I have a loose umbilical cord. Can you plug it in somewhere? Would you just plug that in for me, please? Because I
Wasn't
really
ready for
want
that.
some mommy affirmation. Not okay, right? And kind of embarrassing if it's going on, but you got it right. Oh well. Like somehow we think that like ignoring those kind of issues is going to eliminate the embarrassment. Look, I went through that shit. It's painful, rather pathetic, nothing glamorous about it. But you got to finally just be like, you know what? I affirm myself. I don't need this dumb umbilical cord flapping around in the wind looking for a home anymore because that's really disempowering, right? You can affirm yourself. And when you do that, then you can have that openness of a vulnerable conversation of saying, this is right. So this is the pain that I've experienced, but not in a way of like, help me, like not coming at it from a vacuum and a void, but coming at it from then that's when your emotional intelligence will gain you more credibility and respect. But if it's
Yeah.
approached as emotional deficit, there's a difference. And sometimes we misconstrue those and think that acting like we have an emotional deficit or being in a state of emotional deficit is emotional intelligence, and it's not. Emotional intelligence is the fact that we've sat with our own emotion, understand it, aren't hiding from it, and also aren't letting it run our lives, but have found that balanced middle way.
I love that. I really do. Because I feel like once you understand the pain, acknowledge the pain, you discover more of who you are, how to express it healthily, how to express it
Mm,
through your art, how to express
mm,
it through your business, how to make you level up. And the best thing is, what we're talking about is we can help you guys. Come in our
mm.
journey. This is a safe space. This is the arena
Yeah,
where
this
we
is it.
will fight demons together, slay the
Mm,
dragon. But if you're not willing, you won't grow. If you don't suffer, you don't grow. If you don't express yourself, like how is the other person supposed to understand you?
right.
You're just a husk of a man, a husk
Mm,
of a human being.
mm.
And what purpose does that serve? Then you're not fulfilling your purpose in life. And then you're just going to be depressed in that void, holding that baggage, feeling that pressure on your collarbones that you want so desperately release. I'll keep saying it. When we have each other, we have everything. I wish we could really stress that out of the Western culture, and hopefully, maybe we could do it. Maybe me and you could do it together, and maybe we could do it with other people if they're willing. If they're willing to be vulnerable.
That's it. Yeah. Change takes community. Excuse me. Right, and there's that idea of there's community coming from communion, so that the first change is within yourself, and that is inner communion, inner community, and that's that's really what we're speaking to, is the dissonance between brain and body, and the importance of embracing your emotion. Embracing vulnerability means sitting with your body, your pain, your emotion, and not letting your brain just try to like stuff it down and compartmentalize it and just deal with it, right? Kind of shamble forward, right? So that's the inner communion and the inner community, because we have these differentiated aspects of our being, and we are one person, but too often we have a schizophrenic experience of life because and that's exactly the shadow. The shadow is that exiled, that pushed away, that cut off aspect of our own being. So there's no inner communion, there's no inner community, and the community as a large suffers. The next step of that is your close community, usually family, right? For me, that's my wife and 2 kids. That's the next ring of the community, and then outside of that is going to be like my circle of friends. Like but then it ripples out. So it comes back to, we don't change the world by going out to change the world. We change the world by changing ourselves. You change yourself, you restore your own inner communion, you build your own inner community, and you will positively impact the community around you. And if that does reach out and influence the entire community of a nation, amazing, right? And I wouldn't set out for anything less. And that's exactly
Hell yes.
what we're here to do with this podcast, with this live show. What the intention for it is to uplift men, right? To build and create that space for men to have community, to go on the journey inward, to rebuild our own inner community, and then have community with each other. And we have the blessing and the curse of the modern digital age, right? You want to heal, put down the phone, stop this doom scrolling. And you also
Mm.
have the opportunity to engage with us here in this community. And we're building our community. Well, PJ, I think you have that, don't you? The
I do, and
so,
it's up.
all right.
It's running. Let me post it up. Reality Dreamers is my podcast, guys. You could also engage with me on Twitter and Instagram. That is my link tree. Love to hear more about what you guys want to see, hear, listen to, speak up for. Um, I release my podcast usually on a weekly basis. Next episode will definitely be next Monday. Check it out and come grow with me and Peter. Peter, let's shake things up, my man.
What do you got? Sounds like
Oh, I was trying to give you the floor. I was trying to give you a floor with your amazing skills as my mentor, brother.
oh. I hate talking about myself.
All
But
right, I got
I'm just gonna
this.
drop. I'm gonna say, listen, if this is resonating, you want to support us, you want to support me in this, here's my link as well. We've got it on the ticker.
There you go.
There's my, and I'm putting together a community as well to start to incorporate with this. And I'll have more about information about that coming soon, as I wrap up the building phase that I'm in right now. PJ's got the behind the scenes look there. But yeah, if you want to learn more about that, definitely connect with me. You can go there to just drop some support, or just send a note. I don't know. But yeah, anyway, just definitely subscribe, like this, share this, and yeah, you can reach out to us anytime. That's about it. This has been a great
Thank
episode.
you.
Really just love creating this space and just showing up every week. And whoever listens, whoever's here, whoever's watching us, looks like we got somebody right now, so thank you. You know what I mean? It's just great to have you here, and I look forward to just continuing this conversation and building this community and this connection. So reach out anytime. That's why I'm here. That's why we're here. But that really, for me, the bottom line is yes, because I see too many men in pain, the pain of wondering, who am I? Right? And why am I not enough? Why do I not feel like a man? Why is life passing me by? And we're surrounded with a lot of BS when it comes to masculinity and personal development. Like, these are kind of separate topics, but they're the same, one and the same, right? So it's time to just take it by the horns, right? And just
There you go.
and for and just say, look, I'm not here because I'm perfect, and I'm not here because I have it all figured out, right? But we're doing this together, and I've got more coming out. Why? Because I'm just here to do anything and everything I can to support men, period. The men who want to grow, right? Because if you don't, because again, the foundation of it all, the pillar of it all for me is like, if you don't want it, you'll never have it, and nobody can get it for you, right? I can't help anybody that doesn't want to grow themselves. But if you're ready to grow,
Do the
that's what I'm
blood,
good
do
at.
the
If
sweat,
you're ready to
do the
heal,
tears.
that's what I'm good at. So reach out.
Thank you all. Have a great night. See you next time on next Thursday at 5 or 3 p.m. if you're Mountain Standard Time.
Yeah, somewhere probably more like 3:30, because we always start a little late. So we always jump in, and then we got some stuff, or somebody hits traffic, or like a crazy rainstorm like I did today, and so somewhere in there. But yeah, every Thursday around 3:30 Mountain, 5:30 Eastern, we're going live.